So we're in our final video on Paley's design argument, and we're going to see how he actually applies the lessons that he thinks he's learned from the watch argument to the world to draw the conclusion that there is a supreme intelligence, a perfect and infinite creator. So remember, his goal is God exists, and God according to this traditional conception that we've been talking about. The intermediate goal is he wants to give us a specific reason to believe that God exists, namely the complex goodness of the world. And how is he going to get to that intermediate goal? Well, using that analogy between the watch and the world. So we have discussed how Paley thinks that if a watch exists, we have good reason to conclude that there's a powerful intelligence. Why? Well, because only a powerful intelligence could have created something as well ordered as a watch. He thinks the world is in some sense like the watch because it too is well ordered, and given that the world is, so we need for the world to be well ordered, there needs to be something that created it that is more complex than it, more powerful than it, better than it, and that would be God. So what we need to do then is see how that argument is going to work in the case of the world, and we'll see that it's very parallel to the case of the watch, which is the big point of Paley's argument. So here's the watch argument. We start with the observations that a well-ordered thing is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence. That's what Paley thinks, and huge coincidences are very unlikely. From those two, it follows it's a valid argument to this sort of sub-conclusion on the second row that every well-ordered thing was almost certainly designed by a powerful intelligence in some way. And if we combine that with the claim that this watch is well-ordered, then we can conclude that almost certainly there is a powerful intelligence. Okay, so there is the watch argument. Now, the world argument is almost exactly the same. The only differences are in the claim, the claim on the left, or on your right, on the second row, where we don't talk about the watch anymore. We say that the world is well ordered, and then in the conclusion will say not that there's a powerful intelligence, but that there's a supreme intelligence. So we want to know, okay, and just as we were able to see what the premises, the fundamental premises of the watch argument are, so we can do the same thing here. These are the claims in green, are claims that don't follow from any other claims, and so we can see that really this is Paley's argument, where he's starting from and where he ends up. The world is well ordered, huge coincidences are very unlikely, and a well-ordered thing is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence. So almost certainly there is a supreme intelligence. That's in the end, the argument that he wants to give us to support the view that God on this traditional conception exists. This is the argument from design, the teleological argument. So how should we evaluate the argument? Well, we can remember what we've been talking about, the way we've been talking about evaluating arguments previously. If the argument is valid, and if the premises are true, okay, then the argument does a good job. It establishes its conclusion. On the other hand, if the argument is invalid, or if one of the premises are false, then the argument does not establish the conclusion. That doesn't mean the conclusion is false. It just means that the argument doesn't get you to the conclusion. Maybe you can get to the conclusion in some other way, or maybe, yeah. So maybe we can't ever know the fact of the matter, that in fact the conclusion is true, but we're never going to be in a position to know it, and we'll never get there. So we need to ask then, though, with looking at this world argument, is it valid? And what about the premises? Are they true or are they false? So the argument is indeed valid. If we say that the world is well ordered, and we say that a well-ordered thing is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence, then the world is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence. And huge coincidences are very unlikely, so it's almost certain that the world was created by an intelligence more powerful and more complex and better than the world. And when we say the world here, we mean the entire universe, not just the planet Earth. So this is a valid argument, and there's, we have to be clear about exactly what we mean by supreme intelligence. I'll come back to that, but this is more or less, if we understand supreme in the right way, then this is a valid argument. So if you don't want to agree with Paley, then you're going to have to criticize one of the three premises. And so we want to ask, are the premises true? If Paley can establish that they are true, then he has given us a pretty powerful argument. Huge coincidences are very unlikely. That seems okay. That seems like, yeah, that's probably true. I mean, like huge coincidences, sort of that's by their nature. That's what they are. They don't happen, except extremely rarely. A well-ordered thing is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence. And Paley here seems to think, well, what's the alternative? I can't think of an alternative, and so this must be true. So that's Paley's view. Maybe he's right, maybe he's not, but that's his view. Okay, so what about the last premise? The world is well-ordered. In what way is the world well-ordered, does Paley think? Well, remember, the watch is well-ordered. What we mean when we say that is that the watch has a certain goal, it does a good thing, and the watch is also very complex, and its complexity is what enables it to do its job. So we have this relationship between the complexity and doing the job or doing a good thing. And that's well-ordered, that's good complexity. So, well, here's something that is at least complex. This is the U.S. Congressional Building, and certainly Congress is very complex in its functioning. And, does it do a good job? Well, I don't know. That's sort of a debatable issue. We'll be doing some political philosophy later on. I'm thinking a little bit about that. But this is certainly at least something complex that was created by humans. But, of course, Paley's not interested in complex things that were created by humans, and in particular, not just complex things, but things that are well-ordered, good in this complex way. So then, what is he thinking about? Well, what he's thinking about is life. He says, look at animals, for example, and in his view, you see that they are, very incredibly well suited to their conditions, right? The bird has the beak that's shaped the right way to crack the nuts. The lizard has, its skin does the right things, and it's cold-blooded, and, it's very well adapted to its environment, and this primate is very well adapted to his or her environment. I'm not actually sure if it's a boy or a girl. That's the first primate selfie. That primate intentionally apparently tripped a camera in the jungle that was set up to observe them, and went and looked in the camera. So anyway, I don't know if that's an example of good complexity and well-orderedness or not, but Paley looks at the world and he says the animals are incredibly well suited to their environments, and the same thing is true of plants and all sorts of other organisms, and humans too. So when Paley looks at the world, he sees well-ordered, this all over the place. They're the human design things, but they're also humans themselves and other organisms. And he says, wow, well, these are incredibly complex, and their complexity is what enables them to do their job, to do a job in the way that they do it so effectively. And so that's the fundamental aspect of the world that's well ordered on his view. And you could even think of a whole ecosystem. So it's not just the bird and the bird, but the bird and the trees, and the nuts that the bird eats, and the nuts that the little pieces that the bird defecates that spread the tree's seeds, and so on. All of that, the huge interlocking system that perpetuates itself. It's not just the individual organisms; it's the species groups and the different species interacting with each other. This huge system that keeps itself going. Paley says, well, this is incredibly complex, doing this really amazing job. That is what is well ordered. That is what in the universe is well ordered. So, Paley, we can put his view like this: life, especially but not just intelligent human life, is the good complexity that needs a supremely intelligent designer. It needs at least a designer that's more complex than all of life, that's more powerful than all of life, that's better than all of life. So, we can put his argument like this, in just sort of in list form. Premise 1, the world is well ordered. Premise 2, a well-ordered thing is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence. Premise 3, huge coincidences are very unlikely, and therefore almost certainly there is a supreme intelligence. Now one might ask, does this support the traditional conception of God that I talked about in the first part of this module? God is perfect, God is infinite, God is all-knowing, all-powerful, entirely good, created the world. Well, the supreme intelligence would have to be more powerful than the physical world and in particular all the organisms that on PALEY'S view created. Have to be more complex in the physical world in the same way that the watchmaker's mind mirrors the complexity of the watch by having representations of all the different parts and how all the different parts of the watch fit together. So similarly, the creator of life on Earth would have to have an understanding of how all the different parts of life on Earth fit together, to represent them all and know how they interact, and that would make the mind of that would be a very complex mind, and it would be more valuable in some way than the physical world. Well, so that would be this supreme intelligence, as I've been calling it. But does that mean the supreme intelligence is infinite and perfect? It's not clear to me that it really does. And so in some ways, PALEY'S argument, even if it succeeds in establishing something, might fall short of establishing what it's supposed to, which is that there is a being answering to the traditional conception of God. So maybe not. Maybe the argument, even if it succeeds in establishing something, does not succeed in establishing as much as PALEY wants it to, but still, it would be a big deal if the argument really did succeed even somewhat. So we really want to focus on these first two premises, and we want to ask, do we think that the world is well-ordered, and do we think that a well-ordered thing is either a huge coincidence or created by a powerful intelligence, or do we think, no, there's a possible third alternative? So those are the issues that we'll be getting into going forward. We've seen this traditional conception of God. We've seen PALEY develop his design argument to attempt to show that, in fact, there is a being that answers to the traditional conception of God that is perfect, infinite, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, the creator of the universe. And this is his argument, and so we're going to be considering whether or not it really succeeds, and I'd like you to think about whether or not you think it succeeds, and I'll leave what I have to say about it until the next module.